God is good.
All the time.
All the time.
God is good.
Amen. Can I be honest for just a minute? I didn't want to be here today. I'm going to tell you right now. I didn't want to come. I didn't want to be here. I've been pretty transparent about my struggles with mental health, with depression and such like that. And last night was a bad night for me. It was a rough night. I couldn't get settled. I get right on the verge of a panic attack, and it's very unsettling. I'm restless. I'm stressed out. It's hell. I will say, Sophie saying amen at the prayer was absolutely a gift from God. I mean, what is she? 13 months old? Yeah, and we say a prayer, and she says, amen! That brought a lot of joy to my heart. And speaking of prayers, our brother Jonathan is not here. His mom is in the hospital. If you'll just keep him in your prayers, I think it would mean a lot. So I'm going to tell you about a time where an object lesson of mine backfired. Big time. I was a preaching student at Harding University, and I was invited to speak at this church in the Midwest. Jacob was maybe 2 years old, and I took Jacob with me everywhere. I mean, he was like, wherever I was, there was Jacob, and so it just seemed natural for me. I mean, Drew and Zach were still in grade school and everything going on in the family, so I loaded Jacob up with me, this little 2-year-old. I take him to the Midwest because we're in Arkansas, and somehow I'm assigned the text, or maybe I chose, I can't remember, this is 25, 26 years ago, the passage I'm going to preach on today. John chapter 13. And I'm going to do an object lesson where I'm going to do foot washing. So I'm in a church with a bunch of people that I don't know. Hello, Harper. A bunch of people I don't know. And I'm there. We're having potlucks. We're having events. It's in the middle of their VBS. I'm the adult speaker for the week. And I get to know a couple people. And, you just got to click with certain people. And Bill Fisher was just funny, very evangelistic, very passionate for the church, and we're just talking about the future of the church. We're all excited, so natural candidate to have him come up on the, whatever you want to call it, front of the church, the stage, the platform, whatever. And so I'm going to preach through the text while I'm washing his feet. And I get down on my knees, and he's wearing Vans. They kind of remind me if you've ever been in county lockup. Okay, so I'm down there, and I pull his shoes off, and he has the biggest mischievous grin I've ever seen on anyone's face. Pull the foot off, and I'm like, crap, this guy's got leprosy. He's missing toes. Now what do I do? I literally, I think the guy has leprosy because he's missing his toes, and it looks terrible. And he's just grinning he knew what was coming. He could have warned me. He could have said 15 minutes before church started, by the way, don't have me come up on stage, because when he doesn't, he grins. And there I was in that dilemma. And some of you know I'm very cautious when it comes to germs. And I thought, well, Jesus touched lepers and healed them, and I know I'm not Jesus. Surely God can prevent leprosy from being spread doing his holy work. So I bit the bullet, and I get down there, and I'm sure 90% of the good parts of the sermon just went right out of my mind as I'm obsessed about washing his leper's feet. Cut to the end, after church, he's laughing. He's like, so what'd you think about that, I'm like, I don't want to say, dude, you got leprosy. What happened was when he was 8 back when men were men and kids actually did stuff like that. He was 8 years old and he was mowing the lawn. The push mower, he was on the hill and slipped back and it came across his feet and cut off his toes, you know. I'm sure it was traumatic probably, but anyway. So I cannot help but think of Bill Fisher and that little country church in the Midwest when I think of John 13 and foot washing. To me, this is one of the final lessons that Jesus has for his group, the people he's been with for 3 years. I want you to ask the question, what did Jesus know? John is going to say Jesus knew as we get into the beginning of this paragraph. And I want you, as we read through the text, ask yourself, what was it that Jesus knew? And where does that knowledge lead him? Right? Now, before the Feast of the Passover, remember, I mean, this is like probably, according to historians, the same day that the high priests are sacrificing the Passover lamb. This is all happening simultaneous. Now, before the Feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew, remember I asked you to keep that word in mind, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. That's that Greek word telos, meaning to complete something. Like when Jesus is on the cross and he says, it is finished, it's the same Greek word there. I love them to the end. During the supper, when the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon, son of betrayal, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hand and he had come from God, was going back to God, rose from supper, laid aside his outer garments, taking the towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin, began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around. What did he know? And what does that type of knowledge do for us? Like, how do we build confidence when we know what's going on? Well, he knew that his time had come. The final hours to be. So there's a sense of urgency. There's a sense of, I've got to act now. I've got to pass on something to this group of knuckleheads because they're a mixed-mash group that, face it, no other rabbi's going to call to follow them. They've got infighting. They've got ego problems. They've got complete misunderstandings about the role of Messiah. He knows something's coming, and so he loves them to the end of this love. He's going to show them something, right? So during the supper, right, interestingly enough, there's a lot of material that's unique to John's gospel. John uniquely doesn't mention the institution of the Lord's Supper, right? In the Gospels, you know, on the night of the Passover, Jesus takes the bread, this is my body. He takes the cup, this is my blood. Do this in remembrance of me. You remember all that? Not in John's Gospel. John doesn't mention it. But it's at that time, right? And so, knowing that the Father had given all things to him, so knowing that the Father has given him authority, knowing that the kingdom is under Jesus' authority now, knowing that all this is taken, and knowing that he's come from God, right? God sends him, a big part of John's gospel, and knowing that he's going back to God, that gives him the ability to get up from the supper and to do something that's shocking, something that's amazing, something that's probably inappropriate in the view of the disciples. Well, what do you know it's inappropriate, right? Because Peter's going to contest it. Peter's going to protest. Peter's going to rebuke. And I want you to stop and think about that for a moment. Like, when was the last time you rebuked Jesus? Jesus, you're wrong. But you do it all the time. We all do it. Well, I would never do that. I'm a good Christian. Yeah, you do. Yeah, we do. Whenever we say, God, this is what I really think needs to happen, why don't you make it happen? We're telling God you're doing your job wrong. Our prayer life, there's nothing wrong with praying. And there's nothing wrong with praying when you don't even know what to say. But there are a lot of times when we think we know how to run this world better than God. God, I know who's in office, but you need to put my candidate in office. God, my spouse needs to do this, like be more like me. Or God, my kid's this, or my coworker. Why don't you change it? Why don't you fix this? What's wrong? So we shouldn't be so shocked with Peter when he tells Jesus you're wrong. So Jesus comes to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, you going to wash my feet? Really? Is that what's going on here? And Jesus answered, what I'm doing, you do not understand, but afterwards you're going to understand. And Peter said to him, you shall never. That's an emphatic phrase in the Greek. Like, it is never, it's impossible, not happening. Get it out of your mind. You shall never wash my feet. And Jesus answered, well, if I do not wash you, you'll have no share in me. Simon Peter said, well, Lord, not my feet only, but my hands and my head. And Jesus said to him, the one who is bathed does not need to be washed. These are two different words in the Greek. Bathed, I think, is ipon. I can't remember exactly. And then wash, I was expecting to find the word baptizo for baptism. You know, I want to get that in there, but that's not there. Another completely different word. But one is close to a ceremonial cleansing, and the other one is just like where you just get some water on your hands. Except for his feet, but is completely clean. You are clean, but not every one of you is clean, because he knew who was going to betray him, and that's why he said, not all of you are clean. Why? Peter rebuked Jesus. You probably know back then they wore sandals. You probably know their feet were dirty when they traveled. You probably know part of showing hospitality in that region when you came was that someone would be there to wash your feet before a banquet. What you may not have known is that it was the work of a slave to wash their feet. Now, you probably knew that. Here's what you didn't know, I'm going to guess, because I didn't know until this week till I was working on the sermon. Jewish slaves were exempt from washing feet. When you came into a house, if you had a Jewish slave, they're like, I don't have to do that. That's not part of my job description. Only foreign slaves could be forced to wash your feet when you were in that region in that day and time. So not only has Jesus put himself in the place of a household servant, it's not even a Jewish servant. It's below Jewish slaves' pay grade. They were exempt from it. That's how lowly and repulsive and insignificant the person was that washed your feet. Not just a slave, but a foreign slave. So in Jewish culture, the Jewish slave had to do just about anything himself, but he didn't have to wash your feet. And so Peter's like, whoa, you're not a common day slave, and you're not a foreign slave, Jesus. You're not going to wash my feet, and it's funny. I read that this week, and it was just a funny reminder as followers of Jesus, the things that we think we don't need. Peter's like, I don't need that. I don't need you washing my feet, Jesus. There's a lot of people out there in the world that will say, just give me Jesus, I don't need the church. And I get it. You won't argue with me. I've seen so much hurtful stuff in the church. Tammy and I have had this conversation. Had we seen the way people act in church before we were believers? No way. I wouldn't want any part of that. Well, we can't hold people responsible. We can't hold Jesus responsible for the way that people behave. I mean, go all the way back as far as you want in history. Adam and Eve, right there in God's presence, boom, eat the fruit. Cain and Abel, the first brothers, how does that end up? Yeah. I mean, people have been blowing it for centuries, and guess what? They're going to blow it till Christ comes back. But it's funny, people are like, yeah, give me Jesus, but I don't need the church. Yeah, you do. But it's full of imperfect people. There's room for one more. If there was only perfect people, I know at least one that wouldn't be there. It's funny, the things that we think we don't need. Community. There's no way you grow outside of a community. It's just, I don't care if you look at it from the Bible, social data, psychiatry, personal experience, you just don't grow in a vacuum. It's interdependence. I want to be dependent, I don't like that because I'm big and strong. So I want to be independent. Well, how does that work? It doesn't. Christianity is an interdependent faith. I lean on you in bad times. You lean on me in bad times. It's like the seesaw game, right? Sometimes someone's pushing. Sometimes someone's got to rest. I mean, you just don't make it on your own. I don't want that. I don't need that, Jesus. I don't need community. I don't need accountability. I don't need encouragement. I don't need mentors. I don't need your redemption. I'm going to do it all on my own. Yeah. It doesn't work. But as much as Jesus sits there taking it, well, Peter's like, oh, that ain't going to happen. Jesus has a gift that I just don't have. Patience. Man, I'd have slapped Peter so hard across the face that it would have been like, what do you mean you don't need this? Bam! But he's just like, no. Check it out, Peter. It's up to you. But if I don't do this, then you don't have any part in me. But what's even more amazing? You're clean. Not everyone is clean. He knew who was going to, there's that ouch word, betray him. Judas gets his feet washed as well. I want you to think about that. Jesus takes on the form of a lowly servant below Jewish servants, Gentile servants. He's as low as he can get, status-wise, culture-wise. And dadgummit if he doesn't do something that blows my mind. I mean, there's a lot of miracles that Jesus did that are absolutely amazing. You walk on the water, turn the water into wine, raise the people from the dead. That's a miracle. No. You wash the foot of someone's feet that's about to betray you. That's about as a big miracle as I could think of. Because what am I going to do if I know someone's going to betray me? I'm going to guard my heart. I'm going to keep them at arm's length. I'm not even planning how I might teach them a lesson. But Jesus did teach them a lesson. He washes his feet. The towel that Jesus wrapped around him, it's an interesting word. There's no Greek word for the towel that he used. John uses the word lentium. And it's a Latin word, borrowed, and he kind of transforms it. The word's nowhere else in the New Testament. I don't know any other Greek literature where the word is common, but it's a word for a towel, and it was a Latin, because the Romans spoke Latin. It's a loan word from the Latin language, and it's a huge towel. So think like a bathrobe. So Jesus strips out of his clothes and he wraps this towel, and it buckled at the shoulder. So think like a toga. So think of like a, I don't know what kind of bathrobe you think of, or what are those towels that are really fluffy called? There's a word. Terry cloth, right? Not terry cloth. Something like that. Imagine that.
What are Turkish towels?
Turkish towels?
I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. But something like that, Betty. Let's just use our imagination. But what we know is it latched at his shoulder, and it had a length that was long enough at his feet for Jesus after he washes their feet, which, by the way, he had a separate basin of water the way they did it. He didn't just put everybody in the same dirty water. He had clean water to ladle over their feet. But then this towel had a length at the bottom that was long enough so that he could gently dry and caringly dry their feet off. And it would be super easy and convenient if the story ended there. But it doesn't. Because Jesus goes on and says, just like I did, I want you to do, because I'm setting an example. When he had washed their feet and put his outer garments, got dressed again, and resumed his place, which, by the way, historians tell us that they laid around the table on their left elbow so that they could eat with their right hand, and he would have been at the head position of honor, and then everyone would have been like a semicircle around him, and their feet would be pointed away from each other, laying on their side, relaxing, eating, celebrating the exodus of the children of Israel, right? This is the night where they think about how they left as slaves from Israel. Do you understand what I've done to you? I want you to meditate and think. Here you so did. You guys understand? Can you comprehend it? Nope. You probably can't. Do you understand what I've done? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right. For so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Remember last week, we talked about Jesus saying he was an emissary, right? He's reflecting the light. Talk about listen to the light. Jesus said, if you see me, you've seen the Father. If you hear what I'm saying, you hear the words of the Father, right? If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. I'm not speaking of all of you. I know who I've chosen, but the scripture will be fulfilled. He who ate my bread has lifted his heel against me. I'm telling you this now before it takes place, that when it does take place, you may believe I am he. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever receives the one I send receives me, and whoever receives me receives the one who sent me. Even in the face of betrayal, there is community bonding taking place. Something's happening. They're drawing closer. They're sharing a meal, which in that day signified and indicated a covenant relationship. You didn't eat with strangers. I know where you won't go for lunch today. That's Chick-fil-A. But next week, if you're having the Lord's chicken, you'll look around there and you'll see there's a bunch of people that you don't know. And they might be at the table right next to you. Jesus' day didn't happen like that. They didn't have the Lord's chicken. No, wait. They just didn't eat with strangers. You didn't do it. And eating together was a sign of a covenant relationship. But to share food hand to hand was a pledge of loyalty. Jesus, I'm giving you an example. Setting an example. Hypodigma. Examples. Object lesson. Something that you need to see that you can replicate. What is that example? I mean, do we get down on our hands and knees and wash each other's feet? Was that a one-time knockoff in the Bible? Is that part of the plan of the church? I got bad news for you. Well, maybe it's not bad news, but it wasn't a one-time event. 1 Timothy chapter 5, Paul writing to Timothy in Ephesus, who's pastoring the church there, giving him examples, information, encouragement, instruction. He says to Timothy, talking about widows who the church is going to take care of because they don't have anyone else to take care of. Let a widow be enrolled, that's in the church benevolence program, if she's not less than 60 years old, had been the wife of one husband, having a reputation for good works, has brought up children, has shown hospitality, has washed the feet of the saints, has cared for the afflicted, devoted herself to good work, refused to enroll younger widows, for their passions draw them away from Christ, they desire to marry. Apparently, in the early church, foot washing was a thing. What's the example for us? How do we apply that example? Well, I don't wear sandals. Well, I do wear sandals. So hold on a second. I can't say I don't wear sandals. We don't wear sandals and walk through the dirt and show up at the home and have people wash our feet. But there is an example of hospitality. Probably really the example, I guess, if you want to just cut it down to the bone and get rid of all the scrap, it's humility. Here's my example for you. Remember, he said the servant's not greater than the master, the messenger not greater than one who sent him. If the miracle is washing Judas's feet as well, the mandate must be humility. More than any other trait, I don't care if you read the Bible and memorize it from front to back. And there are people that do that. I don't care if you never miss any time that the doors are open. I don't care if you have great theological depth. If you want to impress me, I don't care if you want to impress me or not, but I'll tell you what impresses me is humility. That's the mandate. That's the magic sauce. That's the magnetic attraction that brings people to the Christ. You know, I was reading about this, getting down the rabbit holes, this foot washing thing with Jesus, and just getting way out there in left field. Not like crazy alien conspiracy theory stuff, you know, just getting into all this minutia. Stuff that you just read through but never makes it into a sermon. And I read that, you know, there are so many like miracles or sayings that many world religions share. You know, like the golden rule. Jesus says, do unto others as you have done to them. Confucius says, don't do to others what you don't want done to you. And Confucius was an atheist. Right? I mean, the story of Noah's Ark was written in the Gilgamesh epic 5,000 years before. Right? I mean, there's parallel stories. No one else has done this, though. No one else has pretended to be a servant and washed the feet of their students. Very unique. It's humility. And Jesus washes the feet of Judas, who he could have prevented the betrayal. He doesn't. The power of community is a vital element in this message from John. This paragraph is full of power. After saying these things, Jesus was troubled in the spirit and testified, truly, truly, I say to you, one of you will betray me. It wouldn't hurt if I wasn't in a community of people I'm pouring my heart into, trying to teach you what the kingdom's about so you can replicate this till I come. And here I am giving my all to you, showing you everything the Father showed me, and you're going to stab me in the back. Imagine what it's going to feel like. I want to die for you people in the next 24 hours. And one of you is going to betray me. But this is what's great. No one's got a clue. One of you going to betray me. The disciples looked at one another, uncertain of whom he spoke. One of his disciples who Jesus loved, which by the way you probably know, that's John. John never says, as he's writing the gospel, hey, this is me in this part of the story. Just want you to take a look at me. No. He's the disciple whom Jesus loved. The one whom Jesus loved, reclining at the table at Jesus' side. Now remember, in their culture, you got the honored guest or the head of the festival or the most important person, and then those who are closest are most important in the group. Peter's not there. John is. Wait, it gets better. It gets way better. John is there, right? So Peter motions to him. Come on, John. Who is it? Who's he talking about? I gotta know. Ask Jesus of whom he was speaking, and so that disciple leaning back against Jesus, and in the Greek, he's leaning against his stethos. Rodney, you're a doctor. What is that thing you wrap around your neck? A what? Stethoscope. Look at that. You all came in here this morning knowing Greek and didn't even know it. He's leaning against the stethos. Think of how awesome that would be, right? To be in the bosom of Jesus, to be close, and to be in love with Jesus, and to be the guy that Jesus loved, man. And there he is. He's snuggled up against Jesus during the supper. Right? He's nuzzled up there, and they're just enjoying this time. And Peter's across the table, like, well, who's he talking about? I told you it gets better, and here's where it gets better. Lord, who is it? And Jesus says, it's the one whom I'll give this morsel of bread. So it's probably a special piece of whatever they're eating. And so they would dip it like in a wine-type sauce, and they would eat it. Now, eating together is a sign of a covenant relationship. Handing someone food is a pledge of loyalty. People closest to the honored person are the most important people in the group. So John is on one side, who's on the other? Use your imagination, because Jesus is getting ready to hand it to him. He's not pitching it like you do at a teen event where you're throwing pizza puffs into each other's mouth. He's able to reach in the bowl and at arm's length pass it off. Where is Judas? Tell me.
The other side.
Thank you, Betty. Betty's listening. John's on one side. Judas is the second most important disciple in the group. Otherwise, he wouldn't be sitting there. Think about this. We always think about Judas as the bad guy. But for 3.5 years, he's been a good guy. That's how fast life can change. That's how fast Satan can get a grip on you. Now, after he had taken the morsel, right? He dipped the morsel, he gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. After he had taken the morsel, Satan entered into him. Now, when we started this gospel months ago, I mentioned that John never uses the word miracles. Always uses the word signs, because signs point to something. Something else unique to John's gospel. Not a single exorcism. You think of the Gospels, and there's like the demon-possessed guy with the chains at the lake. My name is Legion. I'm full of demons. Jesus knocks the demons out of him, right? Not one mention of an exorcism in this gospel. Right? Here's what I believe. I don't know. I've been wrong once this year already. I might be wrong again. I may be wrong about this. I think John is saving that. Spiritual, supernatural, demonic, whatever. He saved it for the most important point he's going to make about the demonic. The top demon, Satan, is going to enter one of the disciples. John doesn't want any distraction. Think. And so he saves the most important element about evil for this point. John could have wrote about a bazillion different demon inner encounters. Doesn't. really get our attention. I mean, they got mine. Satan, not a demon, not a lower demon, not a mother-in-law type demon, right? This is the real demon thing. This isn't playtime. This is the top demon possesses Judas. He enters him. The word in the Greek is really interesting. It comes from, I can remember to this day memorizing certain vocabulary words in Greek class back in college. And balo is the Greek word for throw. And it rhymed to me. It was I love the easy ones, right? Balo, throw, right? It's the word enter comes from balo. So it means to throw or to cast. So Satan doesn't gently enter into Judas like, coming in through your earlobe. Cast has a sense of force and thrust and power. But no one else knows. None of the other disciples have a clue. But it's a forceful event. Satan forcefully enters him, and Jesus says to Satan, what you're going to do quickly. Now, no one at the table knew why he said this to him. Some thought because Judas had the money box. Remember, we talked about this before. It's really a box, not a bag. Jesus was telling him, buy what we need for the feast. The number one important thing that even poor people were required to do during the Passover feast was to give alms to the poor. In their literature of the day, even poor people are supposed to give money to poor people. And so, maybe buy something for the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. So after receiving the morsel of bread, he immediately went out, and one of the most memorable passages in the whole gospel, and it was night. Double meaning there. You know, the sun has set, it's the evening, which is the beginning of the next day for them, so now they're on their Passover feast in earnest, and it's dark out. And it's spiritually dark because Satan has entered the scene. I have an excuse if I'm long. Look at the clock on the back of the wall. What time does it say on that clock?
10 to 11.
Scott, what does it say back there? 10 to 11? Okay, what time is it really? I've been looking at that clock now, and I thought, man. Satan has entered that clock. All right, let me wrap it up. The title of the sermon today is Love Lowers. And that's what I'm thinking about here with Jesus, right? Lowers himself as a servant. Lowers himself from his status of, I'm God, now I'm human, but I'm rabbi, but now I'm... Love lowers its demands on others. I was going to say as I was writing this sermon, love lowers its expectations, but I don't know that that's true. I don't know that that's fair. But I do think it's true and fair that love lowers its demands, lowers its preferences. Love lowers the position. Love is a self-sacrifice. When we truly love others, there's a self-sacrifice. And love lowers self to elevate the other. Not to be a martyr, not to be woe is me, but it's to elevate the other. So love lowers pride and raises the priority of humility. Love in the midst of betrayal here, right? I guess the final lesson that Jesus is teaching in this is the power of community, and that love, I can't say I understand it, but love even has the power power to wash the feet of the betrayer.